Welcome to the Mystic Millionaire podcast, where wealth is energy, success is a mindset, and abundance is your birthright. I am Danielle Amos, your host and mentor, here to help you unlock prosperity, embody confidence, and manifest a life you love. Take a breath, align with your truth, and let's manifest millions. This episode is about trusting yourself, choosing you, and no longer settling. I'm going to be real and honest with you here. I realized a good 2 years ago that I had been inauthentic and that I was being inauthentic. I was settling in an area of my life while telling my clients and telling all of you that you can be, do, and have anything that you desire. And yet I was settling in my marriage, in my relationship. Now, I didn't realize it, to be honest. It took something for me to really look myself in the mirror and to be honest that I had been settling in that area of my life. I think when it comes to relationships, many of us can hold on to an ideal that we have for that relationship. And it's like a vision that we have. But the truth is, year after year, day after day, week after week, my relationship was not becoming what I had hoped it to be. And I take responsibility for that. And the message here is really this idea of settling in your life. And there's a few reasons as to why I was also settling after I had realized that I was. So the first step was to realize that I had been settling, and then to come to terms and understand why I was settling and move through these ideas. And I'm going to share this with you on this podcast. And while I'm sharing, I invite you to be honest with yourself and look at the areas of your life, perhaps, that you may be settling. Perhaps it's your relationships. It may be friendships. It may be colleagues or your spouse, your partner. Maybe it's your health that you've been settling, or your job, your work. I invite you to listen to me as I share and allow it to bring perhaps to mind areas that you've been settling as well. And I'm going to invite you and remind you that you can be, do, and have it all. So let's talk about this. I came to realize that I would say probably 18 months ago, maybe 2 years ago, that my purpose is to have you not settle. It irks me when I see people settling in an area of your life. And this has been my truth since I was a little kid. Like in kindergarten and grade 1, I'd see like a kid stop playing on the field. Like we'd be playing skip rope and they couldn't do it, and they'd sit down and they'd mope and not try again. And I'd beat the kid who went over and said, come on, you can do it. You can do it. Don't settle for, missing the jump rope or the way that you showed up. And this was a constant theme through my whole life, to be honest. And I really believe it's my purpose to have others believe and understand that you can have it all, that you can be, do, and have it all, and that your desires are for you. And this is really why I'm here and doing what I do. And when I recognized that an area of my life was really lacking, that I had a vision for my marriage and my partnership and what I desired and what I was currently living wasn't a match. And we had spent many years, I believe, doing our best to make changes. And so it wasn't a fast decision. It wasn't an easy decision for me to leave, but I knew that I had to make that decision when I realized that I was settling. And I want to share a few fears that were very real for me as to why I continued to settle or why I continued to stay for as long as I did. So one of them was the fear of what others would think. For those of you that made a change or are making a change in your career, in a relationship, perhaps health as well, many of us do fear. We worry about what others will think. And I have even heard from people actually since making this change, oh, I thought you guys everything was fine or the marriage was fine. And I really worried about the judgment from other people or people telling me or asking me if I had tried X, Y, and Z. And I didn't want to go into that so much. The truth is, what others think of you is none of your business. That's a great book, by the way, a true book. And it has nothing to do with anyone else. It's between you and your partner. And really, I noticed for myself that I am a very loyal person. And I was very loyal to my husband. And I was more loyal to him than I was to myself. I was willing to sacrifice my own desires and what I wanted in order to stay. And I think that this is probably a whole other podcast, which I'll record for you. That realization that I was willing to suffer myself, I was willing to put someone else first and sacrifice my own happiness, that was a huge eye-opening moment for me. Brought up a lot of questions like around my own self-worth, why I was willing to do that, and what that meant for even him. I mean, you don't want someone, at least I don't want someone to stay because you feel like you had to, because you feel like you have to, because that's what you owe the person. I also had a huge fear of the judgment of being divorced. There's a huge stigma around being divorced. And I had to change my perception about that. Divorce for me felt like a failure, like I had failed at marriage. But I've reframed that now for myself. I've recognized that was a huge piece that was stopping me, and I've reframed it to actually be a huge success. That my decision to step away from a relationship that was no longer serving me, and it served me for a period of time because I attracted it for me. And there was a moment in time when it needed to end. And I chose myself and trusted myself that now was the time. And so I switched that perception of divorce being a failure to actually a huge success of me choosing myself and putting myself first and creating a loyalty to my own self and to my own happiness, and getting back and being honest with myself about what I desired in a partner, in a marriage, and for my life, and claiming that again. And it took something, so much so that for those of you that are watching the video, I tattooed on my arm the words, "Trust yourself," so that I could remember and remind myself anytime that I was not putting myself forward or following what I knew to be true and right for me and sacrificing myself for another. It was a reminder to trust myself instead. So getting over the divorce stigma and changing that into a huge celebration of choosing me took something. And I actually did that after the decision. And it's funny, it's interesting how when I opened myself up to a different perception about what divorce meant, Instagram, the power of social media started showing me reels and videos of women who took their power back through divorce and what it meant for them to choose themselves. And so all my content actually supported that decision, which I find really interesting. So that may be part of why you've attracted this podcast to you. So I remember at the beginning, I asked you, where in your life are you settling right now? Where in your life can you make a decision and choose yourself and trust yourself to choose yourself? Even though it may be uncomfortable, it might ruffle little feathers. It might mean that you receive some feedback from others in your life or some judgments. Where in your life can you make a new decision today to support you and choose you? So one of the other reasons why I was settling was I was afraid and worried about what that would do for my husband, like where that would leave him. And he is the father of my daughter, Eloise. And I was worried about that. And through uncovering that worry and being honest with myself, I realized how much I was in a codependent relationship and how much I was enabling another person. And that's been hugely eye-opening for me. And again, probably another podcast episode. Choosing yourself means being honest with yourself. The first step to choosing myself and no longer settling was being honest with where and why I had been settling, those reasons I just gave you, and understanding that just like you, I deserved more. Not saying that's necessarily bad, but I deserved and I desired different and more. And so becoming honest with myself about what I desired, what more looked like, what different looked like, and knowing that if you are a spiritual being, which you are, with infinite potential, this is your truth as it is for mine, that if you desire more, it is for you. And so there is no reason to stay in a situation that is no longer aligned with your higher self, with your truth and where you're going. And to have the courage to admit that first to yourself and then to the other people or to the situation. And to have the courage to communicate that with them, with love, and to let them go. And to recognize that the relationship up until a point, it served you because you were in it. The situation up until a point, whether it's your health, your job, your spouse, was for you up until a point, until it wasn't. And once you decide that it's not, or if you decide that it's not, then it's time for you to choose yourself again and become real clear on what it is that you want. So your next step is to understand that you deserve what you're desiring and to be really clear on what that is. Write it down. Use the tool of writing to create a picture of what it is that you desire. And if you can see it in your mind, the law says that you can have it. So do that for yourself. Become really clear because you're worth it. You create a new image of what it is that you desire, knowing that you're worthy of it, knowing that you can be, do, and have it all, being honest with yourself, where and when you've been settling, and drawing a line in the sand and saying no more. And then you become a vibrational match for all that you desire. And this one decision to communicate what's next for you changes everything. And of course, there's some time in between as you make the decision and then allow the 3D world to catch up. And I felt like that's where I've been in the past 6 months to a year. But know that life, yeah. God, the universe is there to support you in the change. So I see you. I hear you. If you've been settling, send me some feedback. I'd like to hear more about how we can support you, because you don't need to do this alone. And if you know that you're ready for this next stage, if you know that you've been settling and you have the courage to admit it to yourself, draw a line in the sand. Let's level up. Let us support you as you create this next level of your life for yourself. So I'm going to go deeper into this next step with all of you subscribers, the Mystic Millionaires in the making. So come join me as a subscriber as we talk about how to create that image for what's next for you. And really, how do you know that when you jump and you make this decision, that net will appear? Where does that faith come from? We'll see you in the inside Mystic Millionaires in the making for all of our subscribers. Thank you for being here. If this podcast resonated with you, I'd love for you to share it. Send us your comments, your ahas, and I look forward to hearing from you.